Welcome to the East County Sports Report. I'm Ramon Scott, and I'm joined by Dave Dickens of EastCountySports.com. Dave, Week 8 is upon us. We've got a couple of big games in the Grossmont Conference this week, and we'll start in the Grossmont Hills League. How about that, brother? Grossmont and Granite Hills, these two teams currently ranked in the top of the polls, certainly at this point. Granite Hills, which defeated Grossmont on the road last year, 44-20, on the way to a share of a three-way championship in the Hills League. But somewhere along the line, Dave, the tables have turned. Grossmont is the higher-rated team right now with their 5-1 record. Granite Hills at 4-2. Of course, Grossmont started off with a victory in league last week against Valhalla, but Granite Hills had a rough game at home against Steel Canyon to fall one game back in the standings. You were there for that game. Give us a little recap if you want to, and we'll start previewing this game as well. Hello to my friend.
Well, all I got to say is that, it was another one of those Granite Hills and Steel Canyon spectaculars, and anybody that disagrees with that, they just haven't seen one of those games. And I would even go as far as probably the last 3 to 4 years. You talk to either Kellen Cobbs of the Granite Hills Eagles, or if you talk to Scott Longerbone of the Steel Canyon Cougars, not only them being friends, but they love this battle, and it's always something wacky or something happens at the end that it just comes down to the wire. This time, though, usually in the past, it's been only Granite Hills' defense being so strong and having their great looks up front and having some pretty quick DBs. But this time, just like the whole plan was, I guess the main game plan, according to Coach Longerbone, was to stop Justice McComb. And sure enough, that's exactly what they did. Justice tried quite a few times to run up the middle. They tried to run a couple of boots. And although they shut down a lot of his passing, he did have a nice a long launch. I believe it was maybe 45, 50 yards to his good buddy Zach Burton. And being that the defensive coordinator over on the other side for the Steel Canyon Cougars, I'm sure that was a little irony to that. And I've heard from some of the other coaches that have said, boy, Coach Jesse over there was going, who was there? Who was there? But, that was everybody. It doesn't matter what game it is. I mean, there's always going to be an oversight, and it was a pretty one if you were an Eagles fan. But I can't say that Steel didn't really come back and really overall outplay the Eagles. However, they did make some adjustments, even though Steel was leading a majority of the game. They made some adjustments, and that was according to I talked to Jeremiah Satbury after the game, and my favorite quote from him was, about his Merry Christmas sack. That again, there was nobody blocking him right there, and he came unblocked, and our good friend Mendez Gall was sacked, and then another play later, same thing. But other than that, he was under a little bit of duress because of their adjustments that they made. But they got so much speed as far as Neely and as far as Chance Johnson, and they always got something up their sleeve. And not to mention, unfortunately for Granite, towards the end, a fumble that would ultimately cost them the game, and Mendez would end up being the one with the biggest smile on his face and have the last laugh as he entered the end zone and won that one. But I think both teams are still going to do decent. I think they're both going to make the playoffs, and I think both of them could do quite a bit of damage, both offensively and defensively. I think even the special teams were quite convincing of being pretty good. I mean, we even noted David Martinez. He made all of his kicks, and he's been money the whole year so far. But they're going up against the Grossmont Hillers. But here's the thing: the Hillers they have 7 games that they're playing at their place. This isn't one of them. They're going to have to travel to Valley Stadium. to face the Eagles on their turf. So I think it's going to be a little bit even tougher than before. But we have some different characters. If you want to name a few of those yourself, as far as the Grossmont Hillers are concerned this year, and the Granite Hills Eagles.
Yeah, well, Grossmont senior Jamie Odom had 378 yards of total offense and accounted for 6 touchdowns, 4 of them passing in the 49-14 win over Valhalla last Friday. The Foothillers have moved into the county top 10 poll. The Eagles didn't garner a vote after their loss last week, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, since they were underdogs against Steel Canyon, even at home in that game. But you mentioned it, Granite Hills at home for the second straight week against these Foothillers. Senior Brody Schicker caught 6 passes for 133 yards, including a 70-yard touchdown, while Robert Tucker, Max Cadwallader, and Chris Churzan also had touchdowns in that game. Dave, you mentioned Zach Burton. He had that 42-yard touchdown where he was wide open. And I told you earlier in the week, I said, man, I just remember a long touchdown by Will Burton in that series. Yeah, you know what? It was in that regular season game. If you remember, he caught a pass kind of out on the flat a little bit and kind of rumbled down the sideline. And it just kind of reminded me of Will, the way that Zach lumbered those last 20 yards into the end zone. I think Zach can get a kick out of that, and I'm sure all his teammates gave him a hard time for his open field run, which was a thing of beauty, no doubt about it, when he caught that pass from Justice McComb. Also, Dave, senior receiver Carlos De Leon, he was the one that caught that touchdown pass in the fourth quarter that closed the Cougar lead to 21-13 with 7.5 minutes to go. So right then and there, you knew that it was still a ball game, despite the fact that Steel Canyon, by most accounts, had dominated the play.
No, they had, and they'd really. I don't have the exact time possession in front of me, but I do know for sure that they definitely kept that Granite Hills offense off of the field as often as possible, and that was the whole game plan. Did want to make note of this game coming up here, though. Quite interesting, actually, that as far as the Hills League is concerned, Jamie Odom is number 1 rated quarterback. He's got so far this year 1,681 yards. He's got an impressive 99 completions on 165 attempts, 17 touchdowns, only 2 picks, and 123.8 quarterback rating. Impressive, super impressive. But here's the deal: Helix has been fantastic this year, and I don't want to take anything away from him, but I just want to make note that for this game, Justice McComb, Junior Justice McComb, has 1,243 yards passing, and we know that he runs quite a bit. So I find that quite interesting. And he is 88 of 154, and he has 13 touchdowns. So just a few shy of what Jamie Odom has. A little higher in the interception category, and a little bit lower in the rating. But it's just real interesting that both of those are the number 1 and 2 going head to head like that. We could see a long aerial assault for most of this game.
We could. I think that's something that some people have called for this week. I think maybe these defenses can step up a little bit. I think the offenses, I'm not going to call them predictable, but I think we know what we can expect. I think the Eagles need more from their running game right now. Look, Steel Canyon, I think everyone can admit they've got a better defense, a stronger defense. Let's say it that way, a stronger defense than Grossmont. That's why they're ranked so high and have such an incredible run right now. So I think the Eagles maybe can achieve a little bit more offensive success. McComb was really pressured by Steel Canyon last week. Remember, he had a hard time. He got sacked several times, so was unable to get away. And I think that will be the equalizer here. You can kind of see where I'm going with this, Dave. I want to hear what you have to say. I want you, Mr. Eagle, to pick first. I'll give you some history on this series. Granite Hills leads the all-time series 26-21, although the Foothillers have won 7 of the last 9 meetings. And last season's renewal was the first time the teams had met since 2013, that game was a 63-49 Grossmont win. We talk about these outrageous scores in today's game, and that was six years ago, and they scored 112 points in that game. Kind of an overlooked result. We talk about all these high-scoring games, but that one does rank up there in some of the highest-scoring games in section history. That was Grossmont 63-49. Like I said, last year, the Eagles won on Grossmont's home turf by 24 points, but everybody agrees that Grossmont was a battered unit last year with a lot of injuries, especially in that game. So somewhere along the line, Dave, Grossmont has passed up Granite Hills in all these power rankings and polls, and Granite Hills is going to look to reverse that calculation on Friday night.
Yeah, I think that some of these pollsters tend to forget that the Granite Hills Eagles did play some good powerhouses like Poway, for example, and they did play Madison, and they did play the undefeated Cougars. So it's not like they've had a patsy schedule. They've had to face some of the elite teams this season, and no easy schedule and not in league play either. It's just going to continue to be really tough. I was just looking. We were talking about the ground game before I actually make my pick. We were talking about the ground game. I'm looking here. Robert Tucker is rated at number 3. He's got 5 touchdowns, 656 yards. He's averaging almost 10 yards a carry. That's exactly what you want, and then some. 66 times he's been handed the rock, and he had a nice long one. And I believe I was at that one for 97 yards. Here's another surprise though. Right behind him at number 4 is Jamie Odom with 482 yards,
Wow.
and he's averaging almost 9 yards a carry, and his long, of course, is 30. But he's got one more touchdown with his legs than Robert Tucker at 5. He's got 6, and then again, the interesting part: Justice McComb at number 5 with 5 touchdowns, and he's got a little bit less rushing yards, 259, and he's averaging about 4 yards a carry. But again, hey, he's using his legs when needed, and he's got 5 touchdowns as well. So really interesting game. If you look at it from every angle, I think that both defenses are going to be it's going to be one of those games. It's going to be a war out there. It's going to be some battered and bruised individuals. And it's going to – I'm not saying it's going to be one of those games where anybody's has any bad feelings towards anybody, but it's just going to be a real strong game. And I think we're going to see a little bit of everything. And I think that I always like to see those two play. This time, though, and this is the reason why I think that the Eagles lost to the Cougars. They might have even shot themselves in the foot a bit. I think they're regrouping. I think they're pretty upset. And Grossmont's coming off a big Valhalla win, and they got to do the traveling. So for those 2 reasons right there, I'm going to pick Granite by a field goal.
I should have went first because I want to pick Granite. Well, now I kind of want to go the other way just so we can split on this. But I just feel like you do. I think it's a home field. I think these teams are closely rated enough to give Granite a slight edge. I agree. Look, Grossmont in the official CIF power rankings that came out this week, calculating the thing it doesn't take into account, and that's where everyone's getting all up in arms, is the strength of schedule is not being taken into account as much, I believe. And so Grossmont, or what it is Grossmont was in 7th. Granite Hills was in 12th. Oh, man, I kind of want to go with Granite in this one. I'm going to go with Granite. We can't take all day on this broadcast, so I got Granite by a point. All right, we'll move on. I kind of want to talk more about that game, but we've got to move on, Dave. And also welcome to everyone joining us for the first time on Facebook. We're live on Facebook, Dave. Isn't that exciting?
Absolutely. I'm excited about it myself. I wish we had a little more time to continue on that game because it is a blockbuster of a game, but we got to get through all these games, and we got quite a few of them.
Anyways, just to clear up my point, though, they don't take into account margin of victory. They take into account strength of schedule, but everyone was kind of wondering about strength of schedule when the current rankings showed that both Eastlake and Madison had played a tougher schedule than Helix and Cathedral Catholic, which played some of the top teams from around the western region of the United States. So that's where some of the questions are coming in from some of the experts on the formula that is not really released to anyone. It's a secret formula and that's same for Max Preps. It just looks like right now the Max Preps rankings are just a little bit more accurate than the CIFs, but the CIF rankings are the more official ones, and we're just here. Let's move on. This game doesn't necessarily need the power rankings at this point, although Santana is ranked very high in the CIF's power rankings right now. The West Hills Wolfpack, Dave, all had but dismissed the Santana Sultans as their rival over the last couple of years. Publicly and privately, we've talked to these guys, previous members of the Wolfpack. I won't say that any of the members of this year's Wolfpack have said this, but in the years past, when we've talked to the players over the last decade, they've talked about El Capitan as being the school's new natural rival. Maybe they've been a little bit more competitive with one another, especially since expansion school West Hills, which opened in 1989, had dominated the series against the Sultans 22-8 all time, and now West Hills competes for a perpetual trophy, with El Capitan as well as Santana. But more intriguingly right now, the Wolfpack has held the Mayor's Cup for 7 straight years, and West Hills players have had to choose their words more carefully because Santana is the team that's probably expected to win this game, Dave, and maybe expected to win it handily. I think West Hills competes hard and remains in this game because of the rivalry aspect.
I think there's a couple more aspects that people need to take into consideration too. Just a couple other thoughts I have on it. Not that that's huge, but I was just looking at the wins, and this came up last year, and this is what propelled West Hills into the last game of the season for a league championship. And they are on a 3-game winning streak yet again. After knocking off Chula Vista, they won the Tony Burner game against El Cap, which in that game, believe it or not, they were tied at 7 apiece up until the fourth quarter. That one was far from being decided. And then the 27-0 over El Cajon. So they have won 3 straight. I think that is huge. One of them being the league game, of course, against El Cajon, and so they're 4-2 right now. Granted, they're not undefeated, but they are also 1-0. The 3-game winning streak I mentioned. I want to mention, which we talked about last week, and we had them on too, and it was fun having these kids on. But Cole's up there on the passing charts now. Cole Klingerman's 1-for-1 for a for 1 touchdown on the year.
Yeah, I know who that went. You know who he threw that to?
His good buddy Kip Klingerman, or should I say his twin? We could say, I guess, and also who tends to be overlooked. Also is Gerardo Hernandez. Each game he has gotten better in the passing game, and I think that he just doesn't get as much credit. Not that I'm saying anything that Temple doesn't have, but I just think that the Wolfpack quarterback is overlooked a little bit. The senior has improved game by game, and I think it is also partly due to the system that he is in and the system that Coach Ash has created. But I do not want to take away his athleticism because he has also improved as well. And I think, yeah, and if you, another note I noticed was the Wolfpack defense has only allowed 28 points in the last 3 games also. So that's duly noted as well, that defense has been pretty stout. And Jake Mayhew, he has carried the rock 70 times so far this year. 70, that's right. That's almost like a McClendon like from last year of Monte Vista, and 321 yards and 4 touchdowns. Yeah, he didn't have as many touchdowns, but boy, he's sure chalking up the ground game. I think that's going to help West Hills in this game for sure, and help out Mr. Hernandez behind center. On the other side, Santana. I mean, what can you say? Um, they just beat Mount McGill 56-25, very convincingly. We thought it was going to be more of a aerial battle. The Santana defense stepped up. They're 7-0, 1-0 in league. I just a couple of notes. Randy Smith uh, has been fantastic. He's got 13 touchdowns so far, 25 receptions for 468 yards. And then Temple is already thrown for almost 1,200 yards. And this is the one that I think is overlooked. He has 100 attempts, and he has completed 71 passes of those 100 attempts. I think that is super impressive to go along with the 21 touchdowns. And I forgot what his number was, Ramon. Was it 40 that he said for the year, or 50? I can't quite recall.
Oh
But
yeah, right. He said 40. Maybe it'll be 50 by the time this is all said and done, especially considering some of the games that they have moving forward. I mean, look at the performance that the Sultans had last week against the Mount McGill Matadors. Temple was terrific.
And let's not forget, we mentioned Jake Mayhew, but I wanted to also mention on the other side, Mutah has carried the rock 56 times for 328 yards, and he's got 5 touchdowns as well. And then the other go-to guy for Mr. Temple is the other guy, Mr. Hughes, and he has 9 receptions for 235 yards. Quite impressive, also. Jared Forster is also on that list. I think 2 down from that. So talk about having some weapons offensively. It's just ridiculous. Not to mention, and I'll let you get into that real quickly so we can move on, is how well that Santana defense has been playing as well, shutting everybody out.
Yeah, I went to the game last week, Santana and Mount McGill. I think I was expecting it to be a little closer, but Santana did a great job, really, of containing Mount McGill's passing attack. Even though Jaheim Allen Pompey did get 11 receptions, some of them were just to the line of scrimmage. So they really didn't let them get loose for those big scores. Now, in the win, Temple had 310 yards and accounted for 7 touchdowns. He rushed for 4 touchdowns in the game. And you mentioned Mutah. He had 186 of those yards, well, total offensive yards in the game. Those weren't all rushing, but he had 186 yards of total offense in the win. And Forster had 4 receptions for 82 yards, including a 22-yard touchdown. And he also had an interception on defense. Senior Cameron Larikia had 2 interceptions for Santana. So they did a nice job against the passing attack. Look, West Hills plays a very conservative passing game. That's why those quarterbacks are so extremely efficient. They aren't asked to take risks or take chances. They may end up having to do that in this game. If they fall behind, they're going to try to control the game with a running style game and short passing for sure. Cole Klingerman, he caught 2 touchdown passes in the win over the Braves last week. I will tell you this, Dave, in last year's game, he did have a 67-yard touchdown reception against Santana. So I think the Wolfpack can draw on their confidence in the fact that they've dominated Santana over the last 7 years. Santana's actually had a bit of a reputation for when they have been expected to compete or even beat West Hills, they've fallen short. They've actually had disappointments in those games. And I'm talking back way over the years. I'm not classifying this team as having shortcomings against West Hills. I know that Santana thought that they had a great chance in that game last year, losing just 21-11, I think it was, or 21-10 in that game, that maybe West Hills was, expected to win, and they did win. But Santana was disappointed because they felt like they really had a chance. But I'm just saying, back in years past, Santana people feel that maybe in some of the games where they were expected to go up and beat West Hills or be extremely competitive against West Hills, again, they've only won 8 out of 30 meetings, that they've fallen short in that. So if I'm Coach Ash, I have that written on the whiteboard. I say, look, West Hills, 7 straight wins. You're never sure of a switch of power between rivals until you get out on that field. And I also, preach to them a little bit that, hey, the scales will not be tipped until they go out and beat us on the field.
What does coach and real quick, what does Coach Estes? What does he write on the board, or what does he tell his guys?
That these guys are not considering us rivals at all. They consider the black and gold team in Lakeside as the rival. They've dismissed you guys, and now you guys are better than them. We know you're better. I know you're better. This is Estes talking. And so we need to go out and get that cup back. We need to get that trophy. They don't even care about that trophy anymore. They're more worried about the other trophy on the other side of town. Now, West Hills, they certainly have the thing going for them right now that because of the way the situation has set up, they still have, a chance at this league title. They somehow pull this off, and they are the favorites all of a sudden to win the league championship because Mount Miguel already has the one loss. Okay, maybe Mount Miguel still is rated ahead of West Hills. I don't know. I'm not so sure of that. They have to play and see it out. Could end up being a big game. But for West Hills, hey, right now you're playing the first place team. You're 1-0. They're 1-0. Go out and win that game. And now all of a sudden you're West Hills. You're keeping this trophy. You're keeping that trophy. And you're the league favorite.
Well, all I could say, and I think that you will agree, this is probably the best. And I have talked to other coaches in the Hills League that don't even have anything to do with the Valley League, and this could be by far one of the better Santana teams in probably even a decade.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. Look, Santana, I'm picking them in this game. You're picking them in this game. Everyone's picking them in this game. Okay, West Hills, it's on you guys to go out there and pull off this monumental upset. But as it stands right now, Dave, if you look at the power rankings in Division 4, it doesn't matter whose power rankings you're looking at. Santana is by far and away the favorite to win the entire thing. So we're not going to, sweep it under the rug and say, let's not talk about this. It's not a no-hitter in the 8th inning. The expectations are high at Santana, and they should be. They're a great team. They are fun to watch. I mean, they're one of the most exciting teams, in the entire county on any level because when they get up in their games against other teams, they look terrific. So,
absolutely, and I think we're both going with Santana, so we'll move on from that one.
Let's make it up to the Christian Patriots this week. They're going to take on Mira Mesa. Just want to bump them up a little bit. We had Gabe Krug on this week of the Christian Patriots, Dave. Our connection went a little haywire, but you got some nice things I think to say about Krug. And because this game was on Saturday night, maybe it didn't get the attention that it deserved, maybe from other media outlets as well. The Patriots won their Eastern League opener against University City, 42-35, Dave, without really completing a single downfield pass. In fact, I think Krug's longest attempt was intercepted, but it didn't matter. He used his legs to outplay Gunnar Gray. He had 192 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns, while senior running back Nate Stein, who I called Gabe the entire show last time, his twin brother that plays on defense. So sorry to Gabe, sorry to Nate. I think you guys are both great. Nate ran great, 165 yards and a pair of scores for Christian. I won't make that mistake again, but all the Stein. We knew about the Steins at Christian. You're talking about history. So anyways, Dave, the game was anticipated to be a matchup between potential Division I quarterbacks in Krug, the Arizona State offer that he has, and, of course, Gunnar Gray, who's going to play in the U.S. Army and Navy Army All-American Bowl, I think it is the one that's in Texas Stadium, at AT&T Stadium. So just want to say a great performance by Christian. Mentions Christian Salacup rushed for 99 yards, including a 54-yard run, and he also had an interception in the end zone, which turned out to be quite big because Christian, which held 2 3-score leads in the second half, ended up winning by just a touchdown. University City came back and tacked on some late scores.
Yeah, that was the thing. I got to the game, and I didn't get there until the second half, and they were up. I believe it was 20. No, that's how they scored. Anyway, they were up by at least 3 touchdowns when I got there, and I mean they had full control. Actually, I do have it. It was 28-12 Christian at the half. Okay, so they had everything in hand. I figured Christian was probably going to attack on another 3 touchdowns, um, which was surprising because, like you said about Gunner, I saw him and I remember him also how well he played last year in a couple of those games against Christian and opposite Owen Easley, and he also played some great game against Monte Vista last year at Monte Vista. That is the one guy I remember quoting Hamamoto, actually, I might add, as saying he is a very dangerous quarterback. He's very accurate. He's very athletic, and he has great field vision. I'm sure that Dave Beazer would say the same thing. At any rate, they were up 28-12. Next thing you know, before they knew, they were outscored 23-14 in the second half. Uh, I mean, what had happened? A fumble, um, also just some penalties that definitely. I don't want to get into the officiating thing because that definitely that always rubs people the wrong way. But there was a couple of mistakes I believe, in my opinion, as a representative of the media. But on the positive side of things, like you were talking about Nathan Stein, he was 79 so far. He's 79 carries for 505 yards, and that's on the season so far. And I know that he was the lead rusher. And Krug, believe it or not, has this is the totals now: 74 carries for 474 yards. Okay, and 3 touchdowns. Um, Now they're
Oh,
ranked.
Krug had four. I don't want to. I know that they do a good job with stats. Krug had 4 touchdowns in the game last week, rushing, and Stein had 2. So
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
want.
those might have been incorrect. And yeah, you're right. I think we were talking about that earlier. How they differed from that on Huddle and also from the Max Preps.
Okay, maybe I just got the stats wrong. I know that Krug rushed touchdowns. He had touchdown runs of 10 and 13 yards in the first quarter as the Patriots opened up a 14-0 lead. Stein scored his first touchdown in the first quarter on a 6-yard run, and that made it 21-6. Krug also had a touchdown run in the second quarter, a 3-yard run. This is from, I thought, your account, but that made it 28-12. And then Krug had a 25-yard bootlegger keeper to the right. This was your description. That
Right.
resulted in a touchdown in the third quarter, and that made it 35-12. Stein rushed for a 2-yard score in the fourth quarter that made it 42-20. Nonetheless, Dave, I know where you're going with that.
And yeah, and the thing is that I wanted to mention some other things, and I know that this has a little bit to do with the Mira Mesa game. Right now, I believe that they're ranked 14th in Division Two, and I know that let's see. Oh, it looks like Christian is 10th in Division Two standings, and same record as the University City team had. So very similar, and maybe even similar teams that they're facing. I actually think that Mira Mesa's a little bit down this year, kind of like the East Lake team, kind of like University City. And then last week Mira Mesa lost to La Jolla 15-7, and scored only 7 points in the fourth quarter. So with that being said, I wanted to add some other good highlights from the defense. Todd Beazer had a tying 11 tackles with your buddy that we sometimes we mix up the names, but Gabe Stein had 11 tackles as
Thank
well.
you.
So, and who actually led was uh, Elio Myers had 13 tackles and he had a sack on the night. So, really, I think that they were overlooked. The defense was playing quite well. I think I really don't understand what happened. Maybe just a little tired of being on the field. towards the end of the game, and the offense leaving the field quite quickly in that last quarter. I will tell you, though, that after the speech that the coaches had with the players, I most definitely expect the Patriots. They were words of encouragement, and I think that these Patriots are definitely going to come out, and they're going to come out firing. I believe that they'll beat Mira Mesa by at least 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I've got the Patriots to beat Mira Mesa on the road. Just want to put a little bit more information. You're talking about those Max Preps rankings, which, like I said, I kind of respect those Max Preps rankings a little bit more right now than the official CIF rankings. But I will tell you, Dave, you mentioned Christian 10th in the Division II Max Preps Power rankings. In CIF's rankings, Christian is ranked 3rd. They are headed for a top seed right now, given their situation. They're just behind very powerful Bishops and also Santa Fe Christian. They're old buddies, 1, 2, and 3, and that's how they seed the playoffs. Mira Mesa, they're sitting outside the playoff bubble right now in 13th place. So they're looking for a win. They're hungry. Right now, the Marauders, they lost their league opener to La Jolla 15-7 last Friday. Elijah Thomas leads Mira Mesa with 675 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. Senior Fave Leomiti leads the defense with 7 tackles for loss. Dave, the Patriots had to resort to that running game last week because they've lost now Carson Stroman to injury, Jack St. Fleur to injury. You know, St. Fleur had a big game last year against Mira Mesa. So Christian's strategy is going to be a little different. That's going to make Mira Mesa a little bit more live this week. I don't expect Mira Mesa to win this game, but Christian, they may have to find other ways. They said that when we talked to Krug, you and I, this past week, said they're, kind of starting over with their passing game, which is unfortunate because we're more than halfway through the season.
Well, I will say, too, as David Beezer, offensive coordinator, was heading to the locker room, one of the key quotes I do remember from him, though, was that he was highly impressed with the running game and the way that they did perform, since they weren't having they were such a, I would say, much heavier passing team than they were in this game. And he was very impressed the way that they all stepped up and the way that they were able to pound the ball in the ground, which ultimately I think won that game.
All right, Dave, we'll move on from Christian. Let's move maybe to the top of the charts, shall we? And take a look at the number 1 ranked Helix Highlanders against the Valhalla Norsemen this week. Dave, some concerns for Helix. Highlander star El Elyon Noah left last week's 64-14 win over El Capitan in the second quarter with an ankle sprain. Noah had scored an 11-yard touchdown run before exiting the game, and while Noah's injury is not considered serious, he certainly doesn't need to return to the lineup this week if he needs a little more rest. Helix should beat Valhalla on the road, Dave.
Yes, and I'm looking at some numbers right now too on the Max Preps, and once again, very interesting of the matchup. And Elian Noah and is number 1, and Keegan Baker is number 2, right below him. Very similar numbers. Elian Noah's got 1,085. He's approaching the 1,100 mark, and about maybe it's 1,007 for Keegan Baker. And they're both averaging over 8 yards a carry. Let's see here. And pretty close on the touchdowns, too. Noah's got 11, and Baker's got 13. So, I mean, they're both – look, I think that Elian Noah, he's surrounded with a lot more all-stars, I would say, around him. A complete team, if you would. And Keegan Baker. There's more players, Meredith, a couple other players that surround the Norsemen, but Baker is definitely he's definitely a key to their offense for sure. And just looking at these numbers right now, that tells me right there he's even above Robert Tucker. So that tells me that he's definitely carrying the load for sure. he's expected, I'm sure, to carry the rock a lot more, even in this next game. He's already carried it 122 times. Would you be surprised if he carries it probably another 35 or 40 times this game? I wouldn't.
Keegan Baker, Dave?
Yes.
Well, I think that's interesting, and I think this game will prove interesting because Baker, he left last week's game maybe just out of getting him rest and the fact that he was up against, a Grossmont team that puts a little more punishment on you than some of the other teams that he had been playing. I think the interesting thing in this game, I mean, Helix big favorite, we know that, but Josh Meredith, the transfer from Helix, he caught 5 passes, including a touchdown against the Foothillers last week. Senior Kaledi Lindsay rushed for 100 yards in the game last week. Sophomore quarterback Tommy Logan, he was 6 for 7 passing, including a touchdown, and he's kind of the Norseman future quarterback. Not saying that they're not going to, go with Pillsbury this week. Keegan Baker back in there. He wants to play in this game against Helix. Be unfortunate if El Elyon Noah isn't going to play in this game. My gut feel, I haven't heard anything. I don't even think I've seen anything other than maybe he had some x-rays or a doctor visit with no serious damage, just a sprain. So if he doesn't play, not a big deal. Helix has enough weapons to win. Here's Dave, and maybe we'll get to see the youngest Noah in the backfield. Dave, here's 2 things. I don't want to compete against the Noah family. I don't want to go up against them in the annual Turkey Bowl on Thanksgiving. They're going to have too many great players. I don't think I have enough good family members to beat the Noahs in Turkey Bowl. I also don't want to go up against the Noahs in Family Feud. I don't know if you saw this week. The Noah family was on Family Feud, and they got 20 racks by demolishing the board, getting all the number 1 answers. Congratulations to the Noah family for their appearance. I don't know when that was taped, probably several months ago. But congratulations to the Noah family. If you haven't seen it, you can go on Twitter or maybe even Facebook and find that video. It was awesome, an awesome performance. So smooth. The way that those family members, the football players, I don't think participated, but I think you could see. I think I saw Zeke in that video when they were celebrating, and they did a great job. Just want to mention that they won 20 grand on Family Feud, Dave.
That's fantastic. Now, I wanted to go back to the typical that they talk about quite a bit, and that's the dual passers, and I'm talking about Delshawn Traylor, and then of course Cameron Brown. I mean, against a team like Valhalla, I'm assuming that they might get equal, or maybe, who knows? Why not put Brown in, or put Brown in for the whole game? I mean, really, I think that would be the right thing to do, and I don't think it's going to happen. But I think that would put more focus. That way we could have Delshawn on the defensive side of the ball. And I know it's not going to happen. But that's just my opinion. I'd want him out there on the defensive side, since who they are playing. Not saying Valhalla is a horrible team or anything like that at all. I'm just saying that I would probably want him out there on the defensive side, and maybe see what Brown could do. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Christian Washington possibly in the backfield this week. Like I said, maybe the younger Noah will get in there, Puka Noah, and run the ball. I think this is the opportunity to try to get him in there. Look, El Elyon came in as a freshman and started to do a great job, and why not Puka right now? I don't know. Might be better than all these Noahs, is what they're saying. Dave, Helix scored 16 points before its offense even came onto the field last week against El Capitan. They scored a pair of touchdowns and a safety. A block punt by Sam Stewart was recovered by Marvin Locke in the end zone. Then John Carroll, maybe the most underrated linebacker in the county, had a 33-yard interception return. He also had 8 tackles, including a pair of sacks. And Dave, they also scored when Dominic Shoup returned an onside kick, 51 yards for a touchdown. He picked the ball up off the ground, kind of his own version of a Shoupin score. And I also want to mention senior place kicker Elijah Lang was homecoming king at halftime. Congratulations to Elijah. Helix won last year's game, Dave, 58-6. Cameron Brown in that game caught a pair of touchdown passes as a receiver. So Brown passed for 2 scores last week to Timothy Christopher for a 58-yarder. I see Helix with the same rotation, nothing out of the ordinary this week for them. I think with Noah sideline, you get Christian Washington in there, and he scored a pair of touchdowns last Friday. And Keegan Baker, he did have 5 catches for 67 yards in the matchup against Helix last year. So Scotties have won 9 straight meetings, lead the series 38-5-2. And I've got Valhalla, playing a good game. I mean, you know what could be very realistic. How about 49-28, 49-21, something like that?
Yeah, and maybe they can put some of these other guys I see on the chart. I mean, I know he's down at 16. He's only carried the ball a few times, but why not put Keontae Scott in there and give him a couple of carries as well?
They'll find a
But
way
yeah,
to Keontae the ball.
I think the same thing. I think I want to give Valhalla the benefit of the doubt that they show up, they play hard, and I'm not saying they're going to get the win, but I'm going to go Helix by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I know what we're saying. We don't want we beat the thing about the league realignment down enough this year, and it makes it tough. Valhalla, unfortunately, they're going to continue to decline in the power rankings a little bit. Doesn't hurt as much when you're playing superior teams. In your ranking, it doesn't hurt as much. But right now, Valhalla sitting in 8th in Division 3, so that's pretty much well within the playoff picture, but they're going to decline a little bit. Bottom line is they're going to have to beat El Capitan. If they do not beat El Capitan, they might be on the outside looking in. That's going to be the playoff game to get in the playoffs, and I don't think they need me to tell them that. That's going to be a big, big deal when that rolls around.
I know Capitan, I'll tell you right now, is not going to be a gimme either. The way that defenses start to improve slowly, and that offense, we all know, I've seen them twice. That El Capitan defense, which we're going to talk about right now, is fantastic. I really don't see many issues with that offense whatsoever. They're one of the better ones in the league. They're overlooked because of the defensive play.
They're overlooked because of the tremendous opponents that they're playing too. I mean, they're underdogs in every game. They're just playing a very, very tough schedule right now. Really the toughest schedule in the entire Division 3. Nobody's played a tougher schedule than the El Capitan Vaqueros. Last week, the Cougars improved to 6-0 for the first time in school history with a win over the Granite Hills Eagles. They're going to host El Capitan this week. They're number 4 in the media poll. But guess what, Dave? Steel Canyon's number 1 in the CIF power rankings, ahead of Helix, ahead of Cathedral Catholic, ahead of Saints, ahead of everybody. Steel Canyon is the number 1 team in the county, according to the CIF formula. Senior Biamu Ayu Rugby Morris had 3 sacks, while Colton Guerrero had 7 tackles, a sack, an interception, and a forced fumble, which senior James Bradle returned 20 yards for a game-clinching touchdown. You already mentioned Jeremy Mendez-Gal. He had a big game, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 70-yarder to Chris Carter to start the scoring early. As for that El Capitan team, Dave, they just keep running into tough opposition. They played Helix last week. Wickhauser still had 161 yards and 2 touchdowns against Helix, and Savion Yoakley and Donnie Green caught the scores. Yoakley had 3 catches for 78 yards against Helix. So what can I say? What can I add?
Well, these Yoakleys that have just popped up all over every single year, they're so talented with their hands, the way they can move upfield, their field vision. There's all-around athletes. And like you mentioned, Donnie Green, too, once he gets the ball and he gets out into the open field, whether it's a catch he needs to make, he runs his route perfectly. I mean, the offense being called by both Ron Berner and Sean McDade, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And they score a lot of points. I don't know who. I haven't talked to Coach Berner yet about who took over or who's the interim defensive coordinator at this point in time. But I do know that there was a change made I heard third party from another conglomerate that that individual that was coaching the defense. I don't want to say anybody's name and discredit anybody. So at this point, I'll just say that a change was made, and I'd like to see now if they revamp and you know the defense wasn't horrible. I just think that maybe they need a fresh look, a fresh playbook as far as on how to take on some of these high-powered or offenses just like their own. Um, but again, like you mentioned, and we've talked to Coach Burner several times in camp about where he's at, and even Steve Dolan on Dolan's dugout, he's mentioned it also about the way that they laid it out and where El Cap lies. And it's been so many years. I mean, since 2014 since they've competed at that high of a level. I think, in my opinion, there needs to be a little bit of a shift. But again, that's not my call. That's just my opinion. But I think it should happen to give some of these other teams a little bit better chance to get that championship.
El Capitan can still win a section championship. They've got to beat one of the Grossmont Hills League teams that's not named Valhalla. They've got to win that Valhalla game. Then they've got to come up with an upset somewhere along the line. I think that might be enough to get them into the postseason where they might be able to compete with some of the likes of the teams that they've already faced in Division 3 unsuccessfully. Obviously, they have the 0-6 record. So that'll be tough.
Well, I'll tell you, the record does not speak for the team as far as the games that I've seen. They've been in these games. The West Hills game is a perfect example. They were in that game. It was a 7-7 tie until the fourth quarter. They can play with anybody, I think. It's finding a way to close the game out. Once they do that, I think that you are correct. I think they can pull an upset over one of these bigger teams. Don't know who it's going to be, but as you have mentioned quite a few times now, they beat the Norsemen, or really there's no really outside chance.
This week against Steel Canyon, I will mention, we talk about Steel Canyon's great defense. Last year, Hauser passed for over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns against Steel Canyon. And Taylor Grassmick, currently a junior, he was on the receiving end of one of those touchdowns in that game. Steel Canyon senior Wes Neely rushed for 130 yards and scored 2 touchdowns in the game last year. Was 48-20 was the final score. Steel Canyon won that game in Lakeside. And current seniors Antoine Walker and Thomas Max Numois all had interceptions in that game. And Carter had an 88-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Remember, I was teasing Jeremy this week. I said, Steel Canyon hasn't got to go to that Chinese buffet yet without any special teams touchdowns. Well, they did bust one off against the Vaqueros last year.
Well, they do have another thing going for them, though. They don't have the Chinese buffet, but it is also homecoming for the Cougars this week against the El Capitan Vaqueros. So that's even more hype, of course, in the favor of the Cougars and how they are not only undefeated, but homecoming is always a big deal over there and the other end of Spring Valley.
Yeah, well, rah-rah to all those Cougars coming back. The Cougars have won the last 4 meetings, and they lead the all-time series just 6-4. So, okay, well, I think we both picked Steel Canyon there. It doesn't matter. Hey, let's move on to one that, maybe we'll have a disagreement here on who we're going to pick. I mean, this one looks like Mount Miguel a little bit on paper, but Mount Monte Vista is coming back, definitely. And this looks for an interesting matchup in the Battle of Spring Valley, Dave, where the Matadors lead the series all time, 32-27. Believe it or not, the Mount Miguel might be a slight favorite here, despite Monte Vista having the home field edge. But maybe that makes it a toss-up. Isaiah Gardner, we had him on our show this week. He had 184 yards and 3 touchdowns to lead the Monarchs past winless Chula Vista, 34-17 last Friday. Senior quarterback Ruben Silva had a 40-yard touchdown with 1 minute left in the first quarter, and junior wide receiver Dejon Shingleton, who Gardner singled out as having a great game. He had a touchdown reception that gave Monte Vista a 13-3 lead last week. Dave, can Monte Vista? Hey, they're 0-0. We talked about what could happen with Santana, what could happen with West Hills. Sure, Santana might win. West Hills could get that upset. Monte Vista wins this game. They're 1-0 in league and a candidate to win the league title.
Well, I think exactly what Coach Hamamoto said at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to echo it every show because I think it's always a wise idea to do that. He set himself up against some really tough opponents for non-league play, specifically to make his team better, and prepare them for league play. And this last one against Chula Vista was the final tune-up before playing these Mount McGill Matadors. I do take into consideration that they are going to play on Monarch turf. Monte Vista may not lead the series, but I'm quite impressed with the with what Gardner did last week. And again, it was against a Chula Vista team that's struggling a bit this year, but make no matter, they still got to win. He still looked good. I think Silva has to step up not only in the quarterback situation, but he also needs to step up in the backfield as far as coverage as a defensive back. I think they have a lot of talent still left in the defense. They still have a lot of talent, like we met earlier in the season, on that offensive line and also on that D line. And Logan needs no introduction. Logan Schmidt is always a spectacular player. We did lose a couple of them. Christian De La Cruz, he would be quite a guy to have right now for Gardner, definitely. But I do still, with the home field advantage, I give a slight edge, and I'm going to call it an upset because on the other end you have JD that is breaking every record known to man as far as quarterback for the Valley League. He's not just doing it with his arm either. He's been great moving his legs, and he's not the fastest, but he just has that great field vision, and he's able to throw on the run so well. Boy, he had a little more height. I think he would be even more elite. But he has just you watched him last week. Maybe you can add to that on how great JD really does play and how he functions in that pocket.
Well, in the loss to the Sultans, he did pass for 228 yards. He connected with senior wide receiver Jaheim Allen Pompey 11 times for 112 yards. Allen Pompey is reportedly second in the nation in total receiving yards with over 1,100 through 6 games. Last year, Dave Laverdiere passed for over 250 yards and a pair of touchdowns in the game against Monte Vista. But remember, Monte Vista won last year's game 35-14. And if I'm Coach Ham, that's kind of what I'm saying to my team is, look, until they beat us, we're the league champs. We're the defending league champs. We're the Monte Vista Monarchs. So you got to take it from us first. And, Mount McGill needs a win. They lost their opener to Santana, so they're 0-1. And the only way they're going to have a chance at a league championship is win the rest of the league games from here on out. I think JD he can lead this team to victory over Monte Vista. They do rank slightly higher in the power rankings. I have a feeling about this Monarch team this week that they're very, very live. Just kind of want to see a little bit more from them. So I'm not ready to pick it yet. I might have to listen to what you have to say. The Monarchs have won 4 out of the last 5 meetings, so let me hear it.
Well, I'm going to go with the Monarchs, sir.
Okay. Then I can go with Mount McGill because you've gone with the Monarchs. So I will, unlike the last one where I felt bad that maybe I should still stick, with Grossmont, and I still sided with Granite because they're at home. I'm going to go with Mount McGill in this one and think that there's just a little bit too much offense for Monte Vista. So I'll go with Mount McGill. This will be one we'll be split on in this game. Okay. Dave, this looks like a really good ball game right here. You have El Cajon Valley, they're 3-3. Castle Park, I believe they might be 6-0. I might have had the graphic wrong. Maybe maybe they're 7-0. I'll check it out as we're talking. But the Braves, Demarius Hyde, he rushed for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns last season against the Trojans as El Cajon Valley beat Castle Park last year 40-21. Or I'm sorry, Castle Park won 40-21 in that game. Of course, the Braves were winless, but this year, of course, the Braves are a much better team this year. So last week, Hyde had 48 yards in the game against the Wolfpack, and Clarence Johnson caught a couple of passes for 22 yards. Hyde has 475 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns this season. Castle Park's looked really, really good, Dave, right now, undefeated. So the Braves, they don't schedule lightly. Whatever they did, they must have seen how good these teams, these programs that they're playing were going to be, because as it turns out, El Cajon's played some really, really tough competition.
Yeah, but I want to point out some of the optimism on just the players that they do, and you just mentioned them. Demarius Hyde, actually in the Grossmont Valley anyway, is listed at, that's right, number 1. He's got 476 total yards. He's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. And, that the offense has struggled a bit, but for him to have those kind of numbers with the struggling offense, that really says something about him as an athlete. And get this, he has also had 101 attempts, and he's got 5 touchdowns on the ground. I think I saw one more. Yeah, one more of the Braves. Joe Malone's number 7 as far as running, and he's averaging 4 yards a carry, but he's a quarterback, 153 yards. He's carried the ball only 41 times. He's got a touchdown with his legs, of course. What's interesting about that, though, is as far as those rushing quarterbacks, he's a couple above who we were just talking about, JD, and even the West Hills quarterback as well. Clarence Johnson also, I'm not looking at his numbers, but I think he's a real big impact player, not only on the field, but also if you listen to him on the sidelines. He's one of those guys that, come on, guys, we got this thing. Let's not hold our heads down. We're going to come back. We're going to win this thing. We're going to do it like this, and we're going to do it like that. And Osborne, Coach Osborne, this is what he's done with this program. For them to be even at 500 right now at 3-3. And I know they lost. They got shut out by, the Wolfpack last week. But they've won quite a few games too. So let's look at the good, the bad, and it averages out to, I think this very well could be, just like they did with Coronado. I think that this could be, and I'm going to go with it. And everybody's going to probably disagree, but I'm going to go with the Braves by 3 for the upset.
Yeah, Dave, I'm sorry. I might have misquoted Hyde's yards there. I might have said the incorrect information. You might have corrected me on that. But I will say that I don't think that Isaiah Gardner's yards are in that calculation you might have. I think he probably leads the Grossmont Valley League in rushing. But Hyde, what did you say Hyde had?
476 yards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Gardner may have more than that, but still Hyde has been a great runner for them this year. Castle Park, they're led by junior running back Eric Hernandez, who has 725 yards and 13 touchdowns this season. The Trojans have nearly 1,900 yards rushing in 6 games, so their strategy is pretty obvious. Dave, it's kind of interesting. You talked last night to Abe Muhazy. Before last season, before El Cajon Valley and Castle Park met last season in that game won by Castle Park, the previous time they met was in that 2005 season. And the Braves didn't even know who they were going to play that year. But Castle Park parents filed a lawsuit after the CIF ruled the team would forfeit 6 of their games. And at the time, at least 3 forfeits, and you were ineligible for the playoffs. Well, they won their lawsuit, got to play the Braves, and the Braves ended up beating them 56-32. Abe Muhazy had 7 touchdown passes and 600 yards in the game.
And how many of those do you recall that Clifton caught?
Oh, fine. So just funny there. But anyway, I don't know. I'm going to go with Castle Park. I'll let you pick the Braves. I hope the Braves win. I think Castle Park, like I said, I might have the record wrong. I don't think any team's played 7 games yet. But yeah, well, Santana's played 7 games. So maybe they're 7-0.
And I'm not giving it even so much to the offense on the Braves as I am giving it to the defense as a whole. I'm not singling anybody out on the defense. But Mario Jacobs is one of the ones that stands out if I were to go that route. But when for some reason when they're playing both ways, if you look at all the games that they have lost, their defense is and the games that they won, the defense has really stepped up. Whether they caused a turnover or if they had a goal line stand, the defense has been I wouldn't say lights out, but I think they're one of the better defenses and underrated defenses in the Grossmont Valley League. And if I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can tell you that for sure, just from the 3 games that I watched, they're definitely at the top defensively. The whole thing key for the Braves, they got to get that defense off the field a little faster. They need to sustain some drives with Demarius on the ground and kind of chip away and just take what the defense gives them. Only concern I really do have, I hope he's healed up somewhat. Not a big deal, but I know that last time I saw them play against Vincent Memorial, Joe Malone, I believe it was referred to as shin bruises, and but he was able to still put pressure on those legs and still able to run. He was still able to throw the ball with good velocity, but that can't feel too good. So I'm hoping that since then he's healed a bit and he'll be playing at top performance. And I'll tell you what, one thing I can say for the Braves that I've said all year, if there's one team in that Valley League that even with their record and who they're playing, doesn't matter who they're playing, this is a Braves team like that Muhazy team that believes in themselves. They believe they can beat anybody that they play, and I think they have a great attitude, and I think that that's going to carry over to the field, and that's why I'm picking the upset.
Yeah, and the reason I'm taking Castle Park, Dave, you mentioned the Vincent Memorial game, number 1 ranked team in Division 5. Braves did not beat Vincent Memorial. Castle Park is the number 2 team in Division 5. So going on the road, I just think that's going to be tough. The interesting thing here is El Cajon Valley, 7th in those CIF power rankings. Looks like they're going to be heading to the postseason, barring a real disaster. Maybe one more win might help. Against one of those league opponents, maybe they can spring an upset, but still looks pretty good for the Braves. Kevon White of El Cajon Valley, he did have 7 tackles in the game last season against the Trojans defensively. So there's some defense for you. Okay, Dave, Mountain Empire Redhawks, they're going to play the lowest rated team in San Diego CIF Division 5. Okay, I'm here to break the news. I'm not here to bag on the schedules. You only play who you can play. Mountain Empire, they're inside the playoff bubble at this point. They need wins, but they can get one here. They're playing the lowest rated team in the entire county.
For sure, I think that this will really help with not only physically but mentally. It'll bring these kids up, whether it be Rico from the backfield, Khalil throwing a couple of long passes, and then of course the defense should be able to step up as well. Really, altogether, the team should be able to come together and really put together a great win. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say they're going to win by at least 3 to 4 touchdowns, and I think that is what's going to be a good uplift after these last couple of games that they played some tough squads too, which one of them really amazed me that they were even contending with. But you know what? Just like the Braves, I think that Coach Van definitely has. He starts from scratch. He builds these teams up, and I think they definitely could end up in the playoffs. And as these kids grow into the system, I think that they will only get better. And who knows? In another 3 years, we could see a repeat of a league championship that we just saw last year.
Yeah, Dave, it wasn't it was a pretty good performance, I think, out of Mountain Empire last week against powerful Hilltop, 49-21. It was only 7-0 at the end of the first quarter. So Mountain Empire really did hang in there and did a nice job. They trailed just 28-13 at halftime. So hats off to Mountain Empire and a strong performance against mighty Hilltop. You've been touting how good Hilltop is, calling them your best team in the South Bay all season long.
Well, yeah, I've said that they've been. I think that they've ranked as kind of taken over the East Lake, where East Lake had pretty much owned the South Bay for quite a while, and I just think that Hilltop has put together a better squad for this year, anyway. Um, and I forgot to mention also receiver Marcus Smith. He's been great all year for the Red Hawks. So definitely want to give him his due as well. But I'm sure that this week I will be pleasantly happy to hear that call from either Coach Van or Coach Rico or Nico. I'm sorry, and a big win and able to say good things about those kids. Which in every game they have been proud of the performance. Similar to the Braves, it's so similar. Those programs, they have to go both ways. The numbers are down, but these kids have a lot of heart, and to see them actually competing is always a great thing to see. And you know the story you always bring up about the Cal. I always like talking about that as well. Of when the Daily California was still around, and having somebody meet halfway and give Mountain Empire their due.
Yeah, now we just put it on the internet and they can have it, whenever we get around to it. But that's not to say that we don't think that they have a chance here to get back into the picture. No. Look, they're in the playoff hunt right now, and they're going to beat O'Farrell. O'Farrell doesn't do a whole lot of passing, so it'll be on guys like Aiden Hamada on that defense. And also cited last week by Coach Prince for his play was cornerback Rodrigo Gonzalez. Some offensive highlights from the game last week. Jericho Brennan scored on a 35-yard touchdown run. That was in the fourth quarter. He slipped through the line along the left side, got into the open field. Prince actually said that as the game went along, he actually got stronger. And Whitehead threw a 6-yard touchdown pass to Nick Rose. That drew the Redhawks to within 15 points at that time, Dave. So they can get this one, but the only concern I have for the Redhawks in this game would be the look-ahead situation, because the H word is next.
Yeah, that's always the one that they have to play for, and sometimes they end up having to play them in the playoffs, like last year too. So definitely a team that they don't look forward to playing every season. But who knows? This could be a little uplift to drive them into next week. But I'm sure they might even give me a Belichick and tell me we're worried about O'Farrell right now, and on to O'Farrell, right?
That's right. They'll take care of O'Farrell, no problem. Dave, thanks to all of our friends that watched us on Facebook for the first time. We're going to start putting our broadcasts, I think, on Facebook. So be looking for us on your timeline. Like it and smash it.
And I want to, before we forget sometimes, and I apologize to all of our advertisers. I wanted to just make sure they get their due as well. And I'm gonna the one that I apologize to Pat Villani ahead of time if I do, but Maracarillos out there on Second Street, one of the best pizzas out here in El Cajon off the Second Street. They have plenty of other Italian tasty dishes and great sandwiches. Stop in and see Pat and his wonderful crew over there. It's a beautiful restaurant inside and out. And Also, now that we're talking about the Italian food, also Robin and Barbara Burner, make sure you go over and check out Nicolosi's over there off of Navajo Road. I will forever talk about my favorite, and that is always going to be the Sicilian mac and cheese. Um, Great environment over there too. Uh, I usually don't uh, prop up other conglomerates, but a lot of times we'll even have the PPR. They'll have some viewing over there at Nicolosi's as well. Maybe one day we're going to have an East County Live over at Nicolosi's, and we'll have a viewing party over there. Just something in the future I'm putting out there. Uh, Also, want to thank the H12. Academy over there in that they moved to Santee. Hoppy Hopgood, Scott Hoppy Hopgood. A lot of you might have even known him, former coach of West Hills High School, now teaching and a lot of kids how to hit much better, anywhere from the youth level up to through the high school level, and really fantastic guy, and he's really improved even some of these high school players the way that they approach the plate. Um, so go on in and see Hoppy. He's always happy to take on new clients. He's got more room now too. So and he's got some all stars there working for him. Also, a newer one coming soon out of Alpine Manufacturing. A new way to put a lot of these homes up and hotels. They just did a Marriott recently, and it's one of those stand up. You put a couple of walls, you frame it on the ground, and then you put it up together. Saves time, saves money. Definitely a great group of guys. Same owners of the AGC, and that's the Josh, Johnny, and Frank Coit. Frank Coit being the Mount McGill head coach, baseball coach, and also our great friends at Al's Sports Shop. Never could forget him. And then Al, or not Al, but Mr. Treadwell. He's always given his personal touch over there. Uh, Anybody needs any service there, he does great for his community. Also, his kids from West Hills and Santana. A lot of times he'll give us some part-time work. He really is a fantastic gentleman, always given to the community. Does great awards for our Bill Dickens All-Star Game. And then last, definitely, but not least, Retro Sports over there off of Fletcher in Dallas. Done great jobs with our own shirts, hats. They do great jobs with uniforms. They're even doing concert shirts now. They do it right there on site. You might want to check it out. And then all your other equipment needs that you might need in the La Mesa area. And also, they do our special patches that we give away for the East County Players of the Week, which have been several lately because we have so much talent in the East County. Also want to reach out there if any of you are ever interested in advertising with us. Type into the chat, send us an email, give us a call, find some way to get a hold of us. And we're also always looking for new talent as far as some new interns. And we also want to take time to thank our he's been doing a fantastic job, Mr. Thomas Ringer, who is our current intern, and he's done a fantastic job for us. Great job, Tom. And for Ramon Scott, I'm Dave Dickens, and this is the East County Sports Report saying good evening and good night.